morning. Welcome on this blustery fall morning. It's so great to feel the weather and the time change, knowing that God is present still, even as the leaves are falling. That's one way to look at it, right? We are so excited today to welcome Katherine Touhey, who will be leading us in a session about the Enneagram. So don't ask questions yet. We'll get to that. A couple of announcements first. Next weekend is our intergenerational Advent event. If that is something you're interested in, please sign up online so that we know how much supplies to provide. That will be our formation hour next week. We will not have a separate speaker or anything like that. So if you're coming to formation, that is what you get to experience, an intergenerational Advent event. Surely there's an easier way to say that. The following weekend will be our adult formation Christmas weekend. We will be doing a candlelight tour of Mount Vernon. We've got a couple of tickets left for that. We will be seeing a Christmas Carol. We've got a few tickets left for that. And then we will be doing a walking through the story of Christmas with some carols involved. So come with your singing voice. I know everyone's excited about that. So those are things to look forward to. Yes,
I hate to bring up a different area of the church, but it is also the first Sunday of the alternative giving.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you for bringing that up. So lots of fun and faithful things to look forward to in this formation hour. With that, let us pray. Good and gracious God, we have all been created in your image, and it takes all sorts to be the body of Christ. As we listen now to this lesson of the Enneagram, open our hearts and our minds to where you might be moving us and leading us within your body. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome, Katherine Touhey. Great to be here. Thank you guys for taking the time to come. Before we get started, just show of hands. Familiar with the Enneagram? I've heard about it. Okay, know their type. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is going to be a complete introduction, basics of the Enneagram, why it matters, what it is, what it has to do with church and spirituality. And there will definitely be time for questions at the end. I have lots of questions. It's an ongoing journey. So we will, you want to go to the next slide? Perfect. So a quick agenda of where we're headed. I'm going to give a brief introduction of myself, a brief introduction of the Enneagram, why it pertains to self-mastery, otherwise known as self-awareness, emotional intelligence, all of these terms that are now being thrown around in society. What is the Enneagram? What does the Enneagram symbol mean? And I'll show that to you. And then a brief introduction of how the Enneagram is broken up into 3 different centers of intelligence, 9 different types, and then a Q&A. So a lot to get through. All right, next. No, I'll stay here. So introduction, my name is Katherine Touhey. I have been a member of Westminster since day 1. I was baptized here. My parents have been members for forever. Susan and Mike McAdoo, a lot of you may know them. Patrick baptized all of my children and married my husband and I. So, and my children all went to preschool. So Westminster is definitely home for us. My experience with the Enneagram started about 2 years ago. Just like a lot of people in the pandemic, my husband experienced a pretty significant shift in his career and started working with an executive coach. Thank goodness. Love you, Dave. And his executive coach uses the Enneagram. And so it was this insight into my husband and his behaviors and his motivations and just the way he like navigates life that I was like, oh, this is beginning to make sense. Like I can begin to get it. And so then I was like, I want in, I want to know more. And so I started studying. I started reaching out to people, and it began to make sense for me, and it began to make sense for our marriage, and it began to make sense for our kids and how we showed up in all the different areas of our life. So after some learning about my type, learning about what that meant, learning about thinking, pondering next steps in my life, I'm a stay-at-home mom right now. What does that mean moving forward? Knowing that I want to contribute and give. And I think of the Enneagram as a gift. It is a gift. And so to be able to be here to share that knowledge is, I think, one of the greatest things we can do for ourselves. So I have been on a year-long journey, certificate practitioner training program that will come to a close in March. And so then it'll be another journey of discovery, pondering, what does this look like, taking it out into the world. So you guys, thank you, are my guinea pigs. Okay, next. So Enneagram, pronounced Enneagram. It is Ennea, meaning 9, gram, something written or drawn. So that is a circle that sometimes you see with the 9 different types around it that we will delve into. Very simply, the Enneagram is a simple concept. It's 9 different personality types. It's an explanation of why you might behave the way you do. But it's so much more. Simple to understand, really hard to master. So what is the Enneagram? Next slide. So the Enneagram is its personality model. So this is what I keep referring to as this symbol, and we'll talk about this. And we'll maybe get to what arrows mean, and maybe get to why there's 9 types. But really what it is, it's an ability to, a tool to wake up to your own personality, to wake up to the veil of ego and personality that you have used throughout your life, and it has rewarded you, and it has been sometimes used as a defense mechanism. But the ability to move beyond that shows you a much better way of life, and a deeper ability to connect with people, a deeper ability of like understanding of the struggles of humanity, the deeper ability to be seen, to truly be seen for who you are and who the others are around you. So bottom line, it's a tool for growth. Okay, next. Yep. So what does this have to do with spirituality? I will say the Enneagram is one of the few tools that's out there that believes, so some like Myers-Briggs, Hogan assessment, DISC assessment, IQ 9, that's Enneagram based. But the Enneagram really believes in order for a human to truly transform, there need to be certain things that happen. There needs to be psychological development. So that's therapy. The Enneagram believes in therapy. There needs to be emotional development. So that's that emotional intelligence. But there also needs to be connection to a third force, a higher being, knowing that life is out of your hands. God has a different way. Believe in God, trust in the path. So this ability to surrender. So there's no deep knowing of God without a deep knowing of self. And there's no deep knowing of self without a deep knowing of God. And the Enneagram is a tool to help you understand that deeper knowing of self. Next. So self-mastery, what do we talk about when we talk about emotional intelligence? So as a parent of 3 young children, I spend a lot of time learning about emotional intelligence. So it's how we show up in the world. It's self-awareness. It's how your feelings affects other people. It's recognizing your triggers. It's identifying your strengths, as well as identifying your limitations. It's the ability to self-regulate. It's ability to know when other people's actions affect you and having the pause to be able to diagnose, how is this affecting me? Can I begin to look at that differently? Can I unpack that a little bit so I'm not as reactionary? It's the ability to be motivated, intrinsically motivated, not motivated for fame, success, money, a deep intrinsic motivation. What serves you? Empathy, deeper sense of compassion for humanity. Recognizing the struggle in other people, recognizing that maybe life isn't all that bad. Social skills, showing up appropriately, receptive to feedback, active listening skills, all things that I love that society is talking about now. And then developing a rapport, recognizing that human connection and the need for that. I mean, I think if anything we've learned about the pandemic is that need to be around people, to be supported. And then lastly, spirituality. So a deeper connection with something outside of yourself. So that's the one component of the emotional intelligence that the Enneagram helps you realize and unpack. Where are your limitations with this? All right, next. So we can think of our lives as an iceberg. When we look at the top, everything on the surface is behavior. Everything on the surface is what other people see. But there's so much more to us, so much more. And personality drives behavior. Defense mechanisms drive behavior. Motivations drive behavior. But how many of us truly understand what all of these things are for us individually? And that the Enneagram is a tool, a mechanism to begin to look at that. It's a journey, not a quick fix. This takes a lifetime. And once all of these things have been brought to the surface, then you can live life as your true self, unabandoned. All right, next. You click it. Okay, perfect. So I talked about the Enneagram in 9 different types. So the Enneagram believes there's 8 here. 9 different ways of looking at the world. And so you can see from here, we can all easily, probably the person next to you is like, well, yeah, it's an 8. The other person at your table might be, it's an infinity circle. We're all looking at the same thing. Neither one is right or wrong. It's purely what your brain is telling you. The problem is when we all look at this and we're so darn certain that we're right, then that creates conflict. So the Enneagram, what does this mean for spirituality? What does this mean for the link between the church? Well, Matthew 7, verses 3 through 5. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? First, take the log out of your own eye. Then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. So our first priority is to remove human obstacles from our own spiritual sight. And the Enneagram begins, it's a tool to let you see what are those obstacles. What is getting in the way of your ability to see all of these different things and not just the one that you see. All right, next. Next. Okay, so the Enneagram symbol. We're moving quick, so we'll have lots of time for questions and answers. So there's so much to unpack. All right, so the Enneagram symbol. So we have 9 types around a circle. And it's broken into triads. So 3 different sections. So we have numbers 8, 9, and 1. Those are considered body types, and I'll talk about that. 2, 3, and 4 are considered heart types. They're all three are connected in a certain way, and they're all, you can think about it under the same umbrella. Same with 5, 6, and 7 under the same umbrella as head types. But what I want you to think about when you see this image is this is not a flat two-dimensional thing. Think about it in terms of a globe. Okay, three-dimensional globe, just like the earth, constantly moving, constantly shifting. So even when, if you discover your type, and I'll use myself as an example, I'm a type 3, right here, right in the middle of the heart triad, which was a big awakening for me. So right in the middle of the heart triad. Yeah, I'm a 3. You're always one type. You never move beyond, you never take on a different type. You have one single motivating behavior, motivation, and I'll get into what the different types are, but your one singular type doesn't change over time. It's always there. It's not like you are 3 one day and then you're a 6 another day. But the beauty of the Enneagram is once you unpack your one type, you begin to see how all the other types play a role in your daily life. And that's when this beauty of, oh my gosh, I can see when I'm behaving with 6 tendencies. I can see when my husband, he's not watching, he's home with my sick 3-year-old, he's an 8. And I can see when he's moving out of 8 and adopting types or behaviors of different types. The goal, if we want to talk about goals of Enneagrams, because 3s are very good about talking about goals, is to understand your type, befriend your type, then move beyond your type. So you can think about yourself like living in a glass box, right? Like Myers-Briggs, some of those other assessments, very good at putting you in a box. Very good at saying, going back to that iceberg, this is your personality, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. Enneagram says that's great, but we're going to move you beyond that glass box. And we're actually going to give you the tools to move beyond your personality and say, yeah, you have these strengths. Yeah, you have these weaknesses. That's who you are. Let's grow beyond that. And so the cool thing about the Enneagram, like I said, you have this circle, you have this moving sphere, you have all of these other tools to help you move beyond your one specific type. And all that means for like spirituality purposes, it moves you closer to God. All right. Any questions? Yes.
Not so much a fact, but maybe it is a question. So because I'm challenging the you're only one type, because I've been showing up ever since as a very strong 9 and 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
And with almost no difference. If the 9 is a little stronger than the 2, but the 2 is so strong that I'm saying to leave that out. Just say I'm a 9 is sort of like limiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also recently I've seen the 4 show up equally strong as the 2. And I sort of like to look at these models more like in a fluid way of seeing there's a baseline, but also making that space for something else too.
So one, I would encourage you to look at subtypes. So some schools of thought believe that there's the 9 types. There's actually further than that. You can break each of the types into 3 subtypes. So there's a school of thought that there's 27, which might help you. And it has to do with how the passion of type intersects with the instinct. And that might give you a better definition of where you fall within that type. But the passion of type, that's where that core behavior is coming from. And so it's worth looking at that. It's like, what is showing us the most? But that's the beauty of the Enneagram is I love the questioning. I love it. I love questioning every day if I'm really a 3. But the more I question that, the more I recognize and see it in other people. And I can say, oh, okay. I'm not reacting that way. They're reacting, they're bringing something else to the table. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Really quick housekeeping. We had a handout. I don't think that there's enough for everyone, so I will go make some
I was gonna
copies.
say, it's in your box.
It's in my box. Great. I will go make some copies really quickly, so if you don't have a handout yet, we will get you one. Apparently.
Patty.
Magic to the rescue.
Yes.
The significance of the arrows going from one number to another.
Okay. So arrows show how certain numbers or types are directly connected to other types. And when we talk about the Enneagram as a growth tool, the arrows are a growth tool. So in the steps of growing beyond your type, once you have a strong foundation of your type, then you begin to see how, so for example, I'm a 3, how I'm connected to 6. And there's areas of opportunity for growth within 6, but there's also when I'm stressed, I can begin to see unhealthy sides of 6 in me. So these are, so the 2 numbers on either side are called wings. They're like your neighbors. They're your neighbors, and they're like your closest friends. And you can begin to see, like, I'm a 3, but I can see how 2 resonates with me. I can see how 4 resonates with me. But in order for true growth for me, I'm gonna go understand type 6, and I'm gonna understand type 9. But I could teach a whole class just on arrow work in itself. But great question. But that's the basics of it. It's a growth tool.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yes.
ask a similar question. It seems to me that one could have some of these characteristics to some extent,
Yes.
but you're saying one of them dominates. Is
Yes.
that right?
Mhm.
But we do share characteristics with
Yeah.
the different persons.
All right. Ready? So, oh, actually, wait. So when I break this down, the 9 types, I'm actually going to talk about it in triads. So I'm going to go through body types first, heart types, and then head types. So you guys know. Okay, next. Next. Okay, so centers of intelligence. So when we think about that circle, we have 3 different sections. And I remember I said that, so I'm a 3, I'm connected to 2 and 4 because we're in the heart triad, meaning we share similar characteristics together. We connect emotionally through our heart center to people. Some people connect cognitively on a mental level. Some people connect literally, me standing in the room. I'll give you an example. That's why I'm standing here. I'm a heart person. I want you to see my heart. I want to connect. You can think about it as like little strings to each one of your hearts. If a mental type was standing up here, he would be connecting mentally to you guys. A body type is connecting from gut instinct. Get body types, you can kind of think like your first responders. They're triggered to just go into action from gut, not thinking. It's the type of person who goes into a room, and I'm saying this because my husband's an 8. He goes into the room, he'll be like, are the tables in the right place? Are the chairs in the right place? Is the audio visual set? That's how he thinks. I'm a heart type. I'm like, are my people taken care of? Do they have a comfortable chair? Is it warm enough in here? Do they have their hand out? A mental type. Do they have their hand out? Do they know where the agenda is? Do they know exactly what's going to happen? And do they know cognitively the data and the information that I'm going to give them? So if you're beginning to think about maybe what kind of type I am, that's one way to begin to kind of diagnose and think about it. All right, next. So we're going to start with the body types. Type 8s. Not always right, but seldom in doubt. 8s are considered the challengers. They are strong. They are assertive. they come across as very confident. And they love going into action. They are the person, you tell them a problem, they go into action to fix it. They avoid feeling weak or vulnerable. They have an armor about them. Oh, will you move the camera at the Pam's?
I do not think I have control over that. I'm sorry.
Can you drag it down to here? Or no?
I cannot.
Okay.
I think that's where it lives.
All right, so their focus is strength, creating order. They think big picture. They're very good at negotiating. They're very assertive. They can be very savvy in the workplace. They don't have to be in leadership roles, but don't mind jumping in and taking on a leadership role. And their bum rap can be that they're controlling, but it's only because they have this big energy to go into action. Okay, they actually love it when someone questions that. They love it when you have the confidence to question them. That's actually how you gain their respect. Their growth is getting in touch with their vulnerability. Why do they have to be so strong? Why do they have to be so assertive? And to unpack that. So, like I said, if we break this symbol up into 3 different areas, we're starting here at 8. Gut, really, it means body type. And all 3 of these numbers, they all associate with the core emotion of anger. And they all associate different ways with anger. So 8s are your most angry. They wear anger on their sleeve. All right, next. So type 9, don't rock the boat. Type 9s are the peacemakers, the mediators. They love harmony. I've heard of 9s talked about like they're constantly looking for disruptions in the force. Jacob is a 9, he'll tell you, he's a 9. And they avoid conflict at all costs. They jump in to make everything peaceful and harmonic so that there isn't conflict. I talked about the core emotion of anger and the body types. 9s fall asleep to their anger. Why would they be angry? That would disrupt the forces, right? That would create disharmony. That would potentially sever a relationship if they were to bring anger to the forefront. Their work is actually to get angry, to fire up that belly and get a little angry. Be a little more like their neighbor, the 8, like be assertive. Don't fall asleep to their ability to make change in the world. 8s, Obama's a 9, just to give you some like broad perspective. And so, but 9s are really good at being leaders because they want to bring all sides to the table. They want to bring all opinions to the table. But the problem is they don't always interject their own opinion because they're so focused on keeping the peace. So that's where I say there's amazing growth opportunities, which with all of the types, not one type is better than the other. I'm gonna put that out there right now. There is no type that is like, this is the gold standard. No. There are types that societies will promote and reward, but that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean that that's the type to aspire to be. All types have strengths, challenges, focuses, areas of growth. Any 9s in the room that want to talk about being a 9?
I thought I was, but now I think I might be a 2, so I. But to Kay's point, 9s, I think, they have the hardest time knowing their type, because they want to, isn't that kind of true? So
Yes.
you're wanting to be fluid is part of you're.
So if you have trouble finding your type, you might be a 9.
So, right.
Or one of the versions of 4, but we'll talk about that when we get there. All right, next. So type 1. It is only imperfect that complains about what is perfect. Type 1s, So I talk about, we'll type 1's interesting. So we'll talk about, they're in the body type triad. They associate with the core emotion of anger. Problem is type 1's are in conflict with their anger. And you'll notice this is a pattern in each of the 3 centers. Whereas one type has a direct relationship with their core emotion. One type falls asleep to that core emotion, and one type is in conflict with that emotion. So type 1s are considered the perfectionists. Now, if you ask a 1, are you a perfectionist? They'll probably say no. But if you ask them, are there areas of your life where you're a perfectionist? And they'll say, yeah. It's a matter of how many of those areas are you a perfectionist? How might you be trying to perfect other people? How might you just be noticing what else could be perfect in the world? Type 1s are in conflict with their anger. They feel their anger. It is alive in them, but they put a filter on it because they recognize that maybe projecting that anger isn't always what's appropriate, isn't always what society would deem helpful. Okay, so there's this filter. 1s have a high inner critic. They're very, very hard on themselves. They tell themselves a story about how they could be doing things better, how they could be better, constantly trying to fix themselves. They have they're very hardworking, high values, rule followers. They love rules. They love rules. They love structure. If everyone could just follow the rules, wouldn't life be great? So, and they get a bum rap of being overly critical, but it's only because they're so critical of themselves. So critical of themselves. And their areas of opportunity for growth, relaxing.
Yeah.
How do you spell that? Fun, wearing flamboyant colors, going on a trip with no agenda, with nothing planned. That's really scary to a 1. Really scary. And just making more time for fun in your life. Life isn't always about work and always about following rules and always about fitting in a box. So 1s, we always joke when I'm in these Enneagram trainings, the work of a 1, and they don't want to hear it, is to get worse. Which as a 3, I'm like, cool, let's get worse. Okay, so this rounds out our body types. And remember, all of these are, even in 1s, even this highly critical, analytical, what are the rules coming from brain, the more they can actually tap into gut, they have a strong gut instinct. And the more they can tap into anger lives in your gut. 8s love feeding off that anger. 9s fall asleep to it. 1s actually have a lot of digestive problems because they're what do I do with this anger?
Is Trump an 8?
Is that yeah, it can be a really unhealthy 8. Yes.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah, that Trump is a really unhealthy 8, which my husband takes major offense to. Okay, next. Okay, so back to our centers of intelligence. So we're working our way around the circle, and we are now at the heart centers. So that's types 2, 3, and 4. They share the similarity of constantly wanting to relate to others, constantly wanting that rapport. Where do I stand with this person? How am I showing up? How are they perceiving me? And the core emotion is sadness, grief, shame. All my Brene Brown lovers, all the heart people are like, yes, you're speaking our language. They really value relationships, and they want to know where they stand with relationships. All right, so we'll start with 2s. Are there any 2s in the room that we know of? Maybe. Okay. So we're all, Miss Pam is on Zoom, any preschool people. Miss Pam is a 2 and she's on Zoom. Hi, Pam. So we are all here on earth to help others. What on earth the others are here for, I don't know. So type 2 core emotion is sadness. They have a healthy relationship with sadness. It's there when they need it, but they also know that with sadness comes needing to ask for help. And 2s are the consummate givers, the consummate helpers, the people that are, you kind of think about it in terms of they know what you want or need before you even know it. But the problem is they don't know what they need and they don't know how to ask for it. And there's a lot of sadness behind that. So their strength is meeting other people's needs, empowering other people. But they value that because they value that connection with you. And that sever of connection with you is detrimental. It's heartbreaking. So they will do anything they can to help feed that connection, even while denying their own experience, even while denying their own need for getting. It's so much of a one-way street that they deny that making it a two-way street. So their focus is other people, their focus is seeking approval, their focus is relationships. Their challenge is not being appreciated. So as much as they're a giver, other people will assume like, wow, it's almost like they give so much, it's amazing, they don't need anything in return. They do, they just don't know how to ask for it. So the growth opportunity is recognizing your own needs and recognizing that in order to have relationships with people, you don't always have to be the giver. You don't always have to be the helper. People want to know you truly for you and that human connection of a two-way street. And so giving 2s the confidence that I'm your friend, even when you're not helping me, is really what a 2 needs to hear. Question. All right, 3s. So you guys can like see straight through me. I'm a 3. So I'm gonna tell you all my deep, dark secrets. 3s are considered the achievers. We are human doers. The work is to be a human being. So I look at my day in terms of tasks and objectives and what I can get accomplished. I resonate with the core emotion of sadness. However, I fall asleep to my sadness because relating with my sadness gets in the way of my ability to do and achieve and succeed. The work is to be a human being. I need to get in touch with my sadness, and I need to be a human being that shows up wholeheartedly for my kids and not focused on my tasks, not focused on avoiding failure, not focused on achieving, but being present and slowing down. The work of a 3 is to slow down.
Can
Yes.
people be a task? In other words, this is a personal question.
Yeah.
Can you sometimes view your kids and what you need to do for them as a task, and therefore it's not, it's energy to them, but it's also because you're focused on your goal, your task.
So I'll give you an example. When I found out that I was a 3 and I really dug into this, and I was like, what does this mean? And when I really begin to understand it, of 3s need to slow down. 3s are on a wrecking ball path of thinking that by doing and achieving and being the first person to volunteer for a task or a project, because I have the energy and the capacity to get a lot done. But what's the motivating factor behind that? It's driving
Be
me
appreciated.
Success.
Mhm. It's all self-driven. It's all feeding my ego, my image. And when I began to look at it from that lens, my to-do list got in half. Because what's really important? Yes, getting the tasks done for my family, getting the tasks done for my kids. But what is no longer serving me? A lot. A lot. Yeah.
Could a type 3 have contrarian tendencies? Not that I would ask that personally.
Yeah. So that's very typical of type 6.
Oh, is it?
Which is connected to 3. So threes, the problem with threes is we are rewarded. We live in a 3 society. And so to tell a 3, hey, all these things that you're accomplishing, you might want to question that. Why would I? Why would I? When everyone around me, every job that I've ever had, has said, you're so good at your job, you get so much done, but never once questioning, is that what I want? Is that what I want to do? Is that really how I want to show up? And so when 3s, and I will say, in all the Enneagram trainings that I go to, the workshops that I go to, might be a shocker, but there are not many 3s there. There are not many 3s who are saying, oh yeah, let me take the time to slow down. But I'll tell you what, there's such a better life once you begin to understand this. My idea of accomplishing something is building a Lego set with my child, which I never would have taken the time to do. I would have been so distracted by so many other things going on in my life, but really that's the priority. So that's just one example of the growth of the 3. Next question. All right, we're gonna roll. Okay, type 4s. So we're still in the heart triad. We're still talking about connections through the heart, and we're still talking about sadness. 4s connect deeply with sadness, deeply. You can think of 4s as, I have a very good friend who's a 4, and I say, how many emotions can you process in 2 minutes? And she's like 10. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can name 10 emotions. They go through life envious, they compare. What does my friend have that I don't have? They value authenticity. They feel misunderstood. They can be highly creative. I kind of think of Taylor Swift sometimes as a 4. They have amazing emotional intuition. They are the type of person, if you are grieving and you are in deep pain and sorrow, they will sit by your side. They are not afraid to be in that space. The bum wrap is they're moody. Well, if I could process 10 emotions in 2 minutes, I'd be a little moody too. And they avoid feeling ordinary because they think, because they feel these such strong emotions, it makes them unique. They like feeling unique. They like feeling a little different, and they want to be noticed for that, actually. Let's see. The growth is seeing what's positive. Daily gratitude, big for a 4, big. Recognizing that there is a ton of good in the world and maybe they're just not seeing it. All right, next. I want to make sure we have some time for, okay, centers of intelligence. So we're working our way around and we're now to the head types. Head types core emotion is fear, whether they know it or not. Some types know it more than others. And we're talking about types 5, 6, and 7. Mental type means they are big into planning. They are very big into data and knowledge. And, but each of the types is constantly kind of seeking this like ability to feel safe. And they do it in different ways. And they're connecting mentally. Now, the hard thing is, especially in our society, you're rewarded for connecting mentally. And so a lot of people initially will think that they're mental types, which we all are to an extent. All 3 of these centers of intelligence live within every single one of us. the work is to recognize that they all need to be in balance. Anytime one is being overused, that's where we get in trouble. And that's the cool thing about the Enneagram, is it recognizes we have all three of these, we're reacting from all of them at any given moment. And how do we begin to unpack that and understand that? So I will say the center of intelligence, when you get to the mental types, it's easy for us to understand how we would connect mentally. Maybe not how we would connect through our body and gut instinct, but living in the US, mental type a lot of people can default to that. But I would question you is dig a little deeper. Okay, next. Types fives. You can learn a lot just by watching. So type fives get typed as being wallflowers. They're not. They can be very social, but really what they're doing is they detract a little bit to observe. I was talking to someone the other day who worked with a basketball team, and this was a high school basketball team, and they had they typed the individual players and then they broke them up into the different triads. So you had your heart type players, your mental type players, and your body type players. Shocking, body type players were the starters. Okay, they went into action. They had 1 5 on the team, and this is like a perfect example of a 5. The 5 had all the abilities of being the starter, but actually asked not to be started. Does anyone know why?
Wanted to learn by watching others.
Exactly. So 2 minutes into the game, he would go in, but he would spend the first 2 minutes sitting on the bench observing and watching. And then he would go in and play just as well as everyone else.
Does this one have a fear of failure?
They have a fear of showing up incompetent. Mhm. So type 5, focus, data, information, analysis. They love a good book. A lot of 5s will have a library that they sit in, surrounded by their books and surrounded by all of their knowledge so that they can show up and have an intellectual conversation with someone. They have a big fear of intrusion. So a type 5 thinks of their day in terms of a well. And this is how much energy, resources I have to give to the people and the demands during the day. And they're thinking in their mind, how is this well being depleted? Will there be enough to get me through so that I can retreat, refill that well, and come back to all the demands of my life? Okay.
Is this an introvert?
They can be introverts, but that's the bum rap, that they're not social. They can be very social if their well is full, if they're surrounded by people that they can be intellectually stimulated with. 5s, it can be said that they shut down their heart. So they'll connect with you mentally. But that ability to open that heart, that's where the work is. To connect with feelings. A 5 should spend a lot of time with a 2. So that the 2 can pull at those heartstrings and open them up. All right, next. Type 6. There's nothing worse than bad news unless it is bad news that takes you by surprise. So type 6, think in terms of worst case scenario. The running joke in the Enneagram community was a type 6 was ready for the pandemic before the pandemic even happened. So they're constantly thinking, well, if I think worst case scenario and I prepare for that, then we're good, but don't give me any surprises along the way. They're constantly assessing threats, risks, forecasting problems. They're the contrarians, constantly testing through questioning, which leaves them in a lot of doubt. And they have 6s have the most anxiety typically of people on the scale of the Enneagram, because they're constantly thinking of worst case scenario. There's a lot of scary, the world is a scary place and I need to be prepared for that. So who can I trust? Where do I seek safety? How do I find safety? What things do I need to put in place so that I feel safe? Whether it's the people around me, whether it's the authority figures in my life, whether it's the structures and rules that I live by. So I'll give you an example. My niece is a junior in college, and there is a group, an on-campus group that she is involved with. They use the Enneagram. And I said, so, and she is a 6. And I asked her, I said, what is it about that group versus other groups and you feeling safe? And she said, I know the rules. I know everyone else's type. So I know who I'm working with and I know how to trust them. She goes, it's really scary when I go into a room. I don't know the rules. I don't know the agenda. And I don't know the people there. I don't know who I can trust yet. 6s are constantly seeking that out and making sense of that. Accurate? Perfect. So with being worst case scenario kind of driven, they can be viewed as kind of negative, but really they're just seeking safety. So their growth is to recognize you're in God's hands. It's going to be okay. Can you trust that? Can you trust that? All right, next, last one, type 7. Type 7, we're still in the head center. Type 7, core emotion is fear. They don't feel fear at all in their life. They are your rose-colored glasses. Glass is half full. Reframe into a positive. Look how amazing life is. Look how amazing life can be. They are visionaries. Robin Williams, classic 7. Classic 7, 2 is detriment, actually. 7s are constantly seeking what's fun because they're avoiding what could be really painful. They do not want to get stuck in hard feelings. They don't want to get stuck in fear, pain, because that is a scary place that they feel like they'll be stuck in for the rest of their lives and not be able to get out. 7s, go on a trip with a 7, you'll have a blast. You'll have a blast because they have plans for if anything starts to become not fun, they pivot to the next plan. They're optimistic, they're innovative, they are visionaries. They think when you're at work and you're in a brainstorming session, you want a 7 to be there because they'll think about every option under the sun. Now, when it comes to implementing them, maybe get a 1 on your side. But in terms of the planning, 7s are amazing at that. They can seem a bit scattered because of that ability to think that big and that broad. So the work of a 7 is to rein it in, rein it in. They have big energy, but rein it in. Become a little more grounded. All right, next. I got a couple minutes. Okay, so I will leave this up here. So these are all the 9 types. Just a brief description of things that I just discussed. But I want to allow some time for questions. Yes.
I have a question. When I look at this, I think, oh, well, there's a couple of things there, a couple of things there, a couple of things. How do we know what we are?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can go about it. One, I wrote some resources for books. The Enneagram on the back at the bottom. The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up. Looks like this. This is, and we're gonna get this in the library downstairs. This is an amazing first step. These are actually the 2 teachers that I'm training with for my certification. And in here, they have checklists for each type that will help you kind of narrow it down. So they have a checklist for like each of the types. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can read, you can sit, you can ponder, you can see what shows up. Regardless, this is a self-discovery. No one can tell you what your type is. You have to live it and it has to resonate with you. Now, there are tests that you can take online that can help you kind of narrow it down. That first website, cpenneagram.com, they have a $45 test you can take. They'll send you a report. 20-page report, kind of diagnosing everything. And they'll give you, based on their findings of the test, they'll give you what they think are your top 2 types that then you can go back and say, like, let's begin to delve into this. You can meet with someone like me. I can run you through a typing interview. I can help you kind of narrow it down. We can have a discussion of what's showing up, what makes sense. So there's like a number of different ways you can go about it.
So early in, I think you said something about how all of this leads to, and either leads to, or is dependent upon your ability to surrender. I think you used the word surrender.
So
And I'm curious
Yeah.
if you could repeat that point, and then which of these is that easiest for, and which of these is that hardest for?
That's a good question. Okay, so. Okay. I think of the simplest way to answer this. So when you look at each of these types at the bottom, each type has, this is what's called the passion of type. So this is the emotional driver of each of the types. There's a mental driver and there's an emotional driver of each type. When you look at the emotional driver, so when I say that there's one type, there is one emotional driver that is speaking the loudest in your personality. And one of the easiest ways to kind of figure that out is by looking at the passion. And the ability to shed your passion, to surrender to your passion, to take back the reins and the control that that passion is holding on you. That's when if you remove that obstacle, that's when you surrender to a higher force, a higher being, a different way. Does that help?
It does, and is there
Oh,
any
one
of
type.
these that are,
It's
can do
easier.
that easier than somebody else? Oh,
They're all the same.
okay.
All the types are, as I said, not one is better than the other, or that's an interesting question. If one is, that's an interesting question. Don't know. I think you'd get 9 different answers if there were 9, a representation of each of the 9 types. Yes.
I'm looking at these things you have at the bottom, and they look like the, what do they call them?
The
The
7
seven sins.
They are plus fear and self-deceit.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is yeah, they are the 7 deadly sins plus fear and deceit. And there's a high correlation. Actually, the author of this book, Beatrice Chestnut, does an amazing deep dive study into Dante's Divine Comedy and going
Oh,
into
really?
purging the passion. Yeah. Question. Yes.
You study transactional analysis at all? I'm not gonna ask my question.
Okay. Are you seeing
Have
similarities?
any bearing in this chart here?
Oh, so
There's 3 of those states, child, adult.
so the Enneagram, you can do, I mean, we could do a whole history lesson on it too. And how it relates psychologically, spiritually, where it started. There's a lot there. Yeah.
The titles of books 2 and 3
Yes.
suggest that no matter which type we fall into, we're wrong and need to come back or go
So
to wholeness.
So the Enneagram does get a bad rap for coming off as initially like negative, right? Like, you're saying I'm a bad person, but really we're saying if you want to wake up to yourself, this is a tool and an opportunity. And we are not saying, but yes, it can initially come across as negative, as an attack on you. Yeah. No, valid observation. Yes.
I think
We gotta
have
wrap
time
up.
for maybe one more question, but I think we'll definitely have to have Ms. Touhey back to complete this.
All right, any last questions?
Oh.
Katherine?
Engaging this with children, I mean, is this something, is
Okay,
it appropriate, not appropriate,
so,
or what, how would you have this conversation with?
so type starts to show up as early as 3 months of age. Different temperaments of babies, they're noticing correlate to different types later on. Type is solidified between ages 8 and 10. And once cognitively they're developed enough, typically teenage years, you can begin to grasp maybe a better idea of their type, yeah.
Sure.
But as my teacher said, if they're watching TikTok videos on it, jump in and at least give them the correct information.
As all things with TikTok.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining.